Action on climate not only protects future generations, but is a powerful engine to create better jobs and lives today. We need to work together to build resilience from the escalating costs of climate change and become nature positive. This means incentivizing protection and restoration, not destruction. It means recognizing nature's true value, not only in economic terms, but in its ability to sustain life, culture, and community for everyone to enjoy.
The palace tried to hide this, but it's too late. At dawn, Prince William made a move that sent shockwaves worldwide. Harry's inheritance? Frozen. The reason will destroy you. A 29-year-old woman just came forward with DNA proof claiming Meghan Markle is her mother. Diana predicted this in a secret letter nobody was supposed to see.
We're living through a pandemic that continues to ravage communities in every corner of the globe. Climate change wreaking havoc on our planet, with the most vulnerable suffering most of all. The few weaponizing lies and disinformation at the expense of the many. And from the horrific war in Ukraine to the rolling back of constitutional rights here in the United States, we are witnessing a global assault on democracy and freedom, the cause of Mandela's life.
Bloodlines exposed, hidden children, royal lies unraveling. What happens next will shock you to your core. Meghan's staying silent, and that silence is about to cost her everything. On the morning of January the 17th, 2026, something unprecedented happened within the walls of the British royal family. Before most people in the United Kingdom had even woken up, senior officials at Clarence House made a decision that would send shockwaves through both the monarchy and the media worldwide. They authorised the immediate suspension of all inheritance payments from the estate of Diana, Princess of Wales, to her younger son, Prince Harry. The announcement was direct, carefully worded, and deliberately limited in its scope. It made no mention of the ongoing media speculations surrounding the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, nor did it reference any of the lawsuits or public controversies that had followed the couple for years. Instead, the statement focused on something far more technical and far more serious. It cited Clause 3 of Princess Diana's sealed trust, a little-known safeguard provision that had never been activated before in the nearly 3 decades since her death. The reason for triggering this clause was simple, yet staggering. A 29-year-old American woman had come forward claiming to be Meghan Markle's biological daughter. The palace statement, read aloud by a senior spokesperson representing the Royal Household Council and authorised directly by Prince William, left no room for misinterpretation. It stated that due to unresolved questions surrounding the legal eligibility of beneficiaries named under the 3rd clause of her Royal Highness's Legacy Trust, all pending distributions to the Duke of Sussex and his dependents were being suspended until full verification could be concluded. The statement emphasised that this action was precautionary, not punitive. But in the language of royal protocol, this was nothing short of seismic. To understand why this matters so much, it's important to know what Clause 3 actually governs. Unlike other clauses in Diana's will that deal with behaviour, public conduct, or even reputation, Clause 3 is specifically about lineage integrity. It deals with biological eligibility. The activation of this clause sent a clear signal that the monarchy now considered the matter not just a potential scandal, but something that could fundamentally destabilize the institution itself. Within minutes of the announcement, global financial markets reacted. British media outlets interrupted their regular programming. News networks in the United States quickly shifted from entertainment headlines to full royal crisis coverage. And at the centre of it all stood Meghan Markle, whose complete silence since the news broke has only made the scrutiny more intense. What finally forced the Crown's hand was not rumour or speculation, but actual documentation. Just 48 hours before the inheritance freeze was announced, palace legal officers received a confidential letter. This was not a new letter. It had been written decades earlier in the summer of 1996, handwritten by Princess Diana herself. The letter had been carefully preserved for all these years by her former butler, Paul Burrell, a man who had been one of Diana's most trusted confidants during her life. Following renewed inheritance audits, Burrell recently transmitted the letter to the Royal Legal Office. The contents of that letter were striking. Diana had written it not as a constitutional figure bound by royal duty, but as a mother who was deeply concerned about the future and anticipating potential risks to her sons. In the letter, Diana referenced a blind Tibetan mystic she had met during one of her humanitarian visits in the early 1990s. According to the letter, this mystic had warned her of bloodlines that would be divided and crowns that would be fractured not by betrayal or war, but by charm rather than truth. Diana took these warnings seriously enough to include a short 4-line verse in the letter. This verse is now being formally referenced in legal briefs as the symbolic framework behind Clause 3. The verse reads as follows: "When blended blood walks crowned paths, truth sleeps until the heir is named. One son wanders beyond the gate. His children are judged by light, not love." At the time it was written, the verse was filed away as a personal reflection, perhaps even dismissed as overly poetic or spiritual. But today, in light of recent events, it reads less like poetry and more like a set of instructions. Royal archivists have now confirmed that Clause 3 explicitly limits inheritance access to verified biological descendants of Diana's sons. The provision was carefully designed, according to palace aides, to prevent external manipulation of her legacy, particularly in situations where emotional vulnerability might be exploited. This is not the first time the palace has quietly reviewed identity concerns connected to the Sussex household. In 2022, under the late Queen Elizabeth II, internal medical verification was quietly considered after both of the Sussex children were born outside of royal protocol. Unlike other royal births, no third-party medical confirmation was ever filed with the palace. At the time, the Queen chose to let the matter rest, exercising the kind of discretion she was known for throughout her reign. But that discretion has now officially expired. The catalyst for all of this was the public emergence of the woman known legally as AM. She was born sometime between 1996 and 1997, a time frame that aligns precisely with Meghan Markle's departure from high school and her entry into Northwestern University. According to sworn statements that have been reviewed by investigative journalists, AM alleges several specific things. She claims she was born during Meghan's freshman year of college. She says she was raised by relatives connected to a man named Joe Giuliano, who is reported to have been Meghan's alleged first husband. She states that she has completed formal DNA testing, which shows over 99% maternal linkage to the Markle family. And perhaps most importantly, she insists that she is not seeking money. She says she only wants acknowledgement and medical truth. Her legal team has made it clear that she only decided to come forward after learning that Harry's children were listed as central beneficiaries of Diana's trust. That timing changed everything. On January the 12th, just days before the palace made its announcement, paparazzi photographers captured Harry and Meghan in what witnesses described as a visibly explosive confrontation at a cafe in West Hollywood. Witnesses said Meghan was carrying a thick document folder. Harry appeared overwhelmed and visibly distressed. One staff member at the cafe reportedly overheard Harry saying something that now feels chillingly relevant. "This destroys everything." Sources have since confirmed that Harry attempted to locate AM through intermediaries. He reportedly proposed a confidential financial settlement tied to a strict non-disclosure agreement. The offer was refused. Just 2 days later, the inheritance was frozen. This is no longer a theoretical dispute about royal tradition or family drama. It has become an active legal reckoning, one that places Meghan Markle at the absolute centre of the most consequential inheritance crisis the British monarchy has faced since the abdication of King Edward VIII in 1936. And according to everyone watching closely, this is only the beginning. As the sun set on January the 17th, 2026, the shockwaves from the palace's inheritance freeze had barely begun to settle when an even more explosive development shook the foundation of everything the Sussex narrative had been built upon. For over a decade, Meghan Markle had publicly embraced and carefully cultivated the image of a modern royal. She presented herself as a woman of resilience and reinvention, someone who had overcome adversity and prejudice to find her place on the world stage. But the revelation of a 29-year-old woman legally designated as AM, claiming to be her secret biological daughter, has completely detonated that carefully constructed image. The timing of this revelation could not have been more devastating for Meghan. Just as the royal household confirmed the freeze of Princess Diana's trust, specifically the clause tied to Harry's descendants, AM stepped forward. She was represented by a Chicago-based legal team and accompanied by a private medical ethics advisor. The setting was a confidential legal briefing held near Inner Temple in London, one of the historic centres of the British legal system. In that room sat 12 journalists, 4 legal officers, and a representative from the Royal Succession Oversight Committee. The atmosphere was tense, formal, and charged with anticipation. AM's statement was direct, devastating, and clinically detailed. She spoke calmly and with composure as she told the assembled group that she was not seeking a crown. She emphasized that she did not want financial gain or any kind of royal recognition. She said she simply wanted the truth to be confirmed and acknowledged. She stated that she was born in July 1996 and that her mother is Rachel Meghan Markle. She went on to explain that DNA testing had confirmed this in 2024 under supervised legal conditions, with all proper protocols followed. To reinforce her claim and remove any doubt about the seriousness of her allegations, her legal counsel distributed notarized documentation of the DNA results. These documents were signed by Dr. Evan Mallory, a renowned geneticist affiliated with UCLA's Medical Ancestry Verification Unit. The analysis showed a 99.98% maternal match to members of the Markle family. On its own, that match might have prompted intense curiosity and media attention. But what escalated this matter from a personal scandal into a full-blown royal crisis was the context in which it all occurred. AM was born just as Meghan began her freshman year at Northwestern University. She was raised by relatives of Joe Giuliano, a man who has been reported to have entered into a private Catholic engagement with Meghan in the summer of 1995. There is no public record of a marriage or annulment between them in civil court. However, sources within the Vatican have now confirmed the presence of sealed ecclesiastical documents from the Archdiocese of Chicago. These documents are currently under review, which suggests that there may be more to the story than what has been publicly acknowledged. As news of AM's claim broke across international media, royal advisors immediately began working to piece together the timeline of events. What they found only intensified their unease and raised even more troubling questions. In late 1995, Meghan graduated from high school in Los Angeles. By mid-1996, she had enrolled at Northwestern University in Illinois. In July of 1996, AM was born at a private hospital near Oak Park, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. Then, in early 1997, Vatican records indicate that a sealed annulment request was filed by a woman fitting Meghan's biographical profile. The request cited career-related separation and the presence of a non-baptized child as reasons for the annulment. The implications of this timeline are deeply damaging. If Meghan gave birth to a child and then surrendered that child to be raised by family members and later failed to disclose this information in her immigration paperwork during her royal courtship or in her marriage preparations, it would represent a monumental breach of royal protocol. It would also potentially violate UK immigration law and constitute a serious breach of moral trust. Royal protocol requires complete transparency about past relationships, previous legal bonds, and any children from those relationships. The failure to disclose such information is not taken lightly. Perhaps most disturbing to those within the palace is what insiders are now calling the genetic guardianship conflict. According to Clause 3 of Diana's trust, inheritance is reserved specifically for confirmed biological descendants of her sons. The clause also requires guardianship and lineage clarity in cases where there is any dispute. If Harry's children are found not to be his biological offspring, or if Meghan is found to have withheld information about a previous maternal tie, it could invalidate all Sussex claims to the legacy fund. The financial and reputational stakes are enormous. Fueling the fire. Even further was a now infamous video that was leaked on January the 16th. The video was recorded on January 12th inside Gravitas Cafe, a boutique coffee shop in West Hollywood. The grainy CCTV footage shows Meghan and Harry engaged in what appears to be a heated and emotional confrontation. In the video, Meghan is holding a black folder clearly marked with the words Highgrove Access. Her body language is tense and controlled. Harry's body language, by contrast, is frantic and agitated. Eyewitnesses who were present at the cafe that day overheard snippets of their conversation that now seem eerily aligned with the unfolding inheritance battle. According to those witnesses, Harry allegedly said, "You lied to me before we were married." Meghan's response was sharp and defensive. She reportedly snapped back, "This isn't about our marriage, it's about their future." The argument ended abruptly when Harry slammed his phone down on the table and walked out of the cafe. Meghan remained seated, staring blankly into the middle distance. According to reports, she called an attorney within 5 minutes of Harry's departure. Sources later confirmed that the folder Meghan was carrying contained correspondence related to the Diana Protective Trust, the very fund that is now frozen under royal directive. Though she has not appeared on camera or made any public statement, AM has now become the most scrutinized figure in the royal world. Her legal team has filed a petition to formally request biological acknowledgement in UK court. The goal of this petition is to have her added to the protected registry of maternal and paternal lineage connected to the royal succession. While she continues to insist that she has no interest in royal titles or financial compensation, the implications of her existence are impossible to downplay. If her claims are verified, she becomes the half-sister of Archie and Lilibet. Her birth predates Meghan's marriage to Harry by over 2 decades, and most critically, her public disclosure coincides directly with the financial freeze affecting the entire Sussex line. Her presence has also cast new light on Harry's increasingly volatile behaviour over the past several months. According to palace aides who have spoken anonymously, Harry has been internally spiralling since learning of her identity. He has even begun privately questioning past events surrounding the births of his own children. The Royal Medical Ethics Committee has reportedly convened to discuss the possibility of requesting independent verification of Archie and Lilibet's biological records. This is a move the palace describes as a last resort, but one that is now being considered a live scenario. Despite the mounting pressure from all sides, Meghan Markle has issued no public statement, no social media comment, and no legal counter-response as of January 18th. This silence, which was once considered a strategic move to avoid adding fuel to the fire, is now being viewed as a tactical liability. The longer she remains silent, the more people begin to assume the worst. And the pressure is only increasing, especially as Paul Burrell, Diana's trusted former butler, prepares to submit Diana's sealed letter to the Royal Legal Office. Burrell's statement to the Telegraph newspaper was brief, but it was devastating in its implications. He said that Diana had warned of this. In her own words, according to Burrell, she told him to keep the letter safe until the fog lifts around Harry's path. Burrell concluded his statement by saying, "Well, the fog is lifting now. The monarchy has survived scandal, exile, and even abdication in its long history. But it has never faced a reckoning quite like this one, involving disputed bloodlines, hidden heirs, and prophetic warnings from its most beloved modern figure." As the monarchy reeled from the emergence of AM and the unprecedented inheritance freeze, new attention turned to a quieter institution that has long been associated with veiled truths and carefully guarded secrets. That institution is the Vatican. On January the 17th, 2026, L'Osservatore Romano, the official newspaper of the Holy See, published a brief and unusually coded note in its classified bulletin. The note concerned sealed correspondences that had been submitted during audience proceedings in 1995 and 1996, involving the late Diana, Princess of Wales. The statement read that the Holy See confirms the preservation and integrity of said materials under interfaith privacy provisions. To the general public, this statement meant very little, but to those within the palace's legal corridors, it confirmed what had long been whispered about in private. Diana had submitted a sealed letter to the Vatican, along with a private account of her spiritual fears over the futures of her sons, particularly Harry. According to a senior clerical aide with knowledge of the correspondence, Diana had been introduced to a blind Tibetan mystic during her humanitarian outreach work in the early 1990s. Deeply moved by his warnings of divided bloodlines, fractured crowns, and false heirs, she allegedly made 2 formal records of the encounter. One was kept by her butler, Paul Burrell, and the other was submitted during a confidential audience in Rome. That document is now known internally as the Hidden Heir Letter. It reportedly includes prophetic lines that are chilling in their specificity. "One of my sons will love someone not for who she is, but for who she presents, and through her others will try to wear the crown without bearing its blood." The Vatican has not publicly confirmed the exact contents of the letter, but in recent weeks, church officials have granted unusual access to the Apostolic Archive following multiple formal inquiries by the British Royal Legal Office. Simultaneously, sources within British intelligence have confirmed that MI6 has reactivated surveillance protocols surrounding Meghan Markle's early years. The focus is particularly on the period from 1995 to 1998, which now appears to be absolutely pivotal. What they are uncovering may shift the entire foundation of the Sussex legacy and raise questions that go far beyond inheritance disputes. Central to this unraveling is Meghan's alleged secret marriage to Joe Giuliano, a security consultant from Pennsylvania whom she was romantically linked to in the mid-1990s. Until now, rumours of a Catholic wedding and subsequent annulment have been largely dismissed due to the lack of civil records. But following AM's emergence and a tip from members of the Giuliano family, investigators have traced a forgotten paper trail. Crucially, this trail does not run through civil courthouses. It runs through the Vatican itself. Insiders have confirmed that the Archdiocese of Chicago processed a sealed annulment request in 1997. The request cited non-consummation and conflicting life paths as grounds for annulment. The file was then transferred to Rome under canon law, a routine step for high-profile or particularly sensitive cases. The request included a reference to one unbaptized child and a plea for full privacy due to the woman's potential public life. The woman in question was Rachel Meghan Markle. While such personal decisions are not inherently scandalous in themselves, their undisclosed nature becomes deeply problematic when someone is entering the royal family. Royal marital vetting, especially for those marrying heirs to the throne, requires full transparency on past relationships, legal bonds, and religious affiliations. If Meghan failed to disclose a previous Catholic marriage, an annulment, or a child born from that union, it constitutes a serious violation of royal marriage protocols. Even more damaging, these facts would have directly impacted the legitimacy of her marriage to Harry under Church of England customs. They could also potentially invalidate certain legal claims made in her UK immigration paperwork, which would carry its own separate legal consequences. One royal legal advisor, speaking anonymously to protect their position, said that this isn't about shame, it's about omission. Meghan walked into the royal gates with pages missing from her life story. Now those pages are being reassembled and the consequences are seismic. On January the 14th, Meghan was seen entering the Toronto office of Blake Castles and Graydon LLP, a top-tier law firm specializing in international defamation, injunctions, and family litigation. Sources close to her suggest that she is now preparing a multi-pronged defense strategy. The strategy is reportedly aimed at blocking the release of Vatican or church-held annulment documents, preventing UK courts from ordering DNA verification of Archie and Lilibet, and reframing the palace's inheritance freeze as racially motivated rather than procedurally justified. But even among her closest allies, confidence is beginning to slip. One Hollywood producer who had previously collaborated with Meghan privately told Variety magazine that she's not playing chess anymore, she's flipping the board and hoping no one notices the pieces. As the Vatican quietly verifies Diana's sealed documents and British intelligence revisits old files that had previously been marked no action, the stage is being set not just for a legal confrontation, but for a moral reckoning within the House of Windsor. By the morning of January 18, 2026, the House of Windsor had shifted from stunned vigilance to coordinated containment. What began as a whisper, a 29-year-old woman claiming to be Meghan Markle's secret daughter, had now escalated into a full-blown institutional crisis. It was a crisis that demanded a swift and unified response from every tier of royal leadership. The trigger was not just the inheritance freeze under Diana's third clause, it was everything that followed. There were Vatican confirmations of sealed letters. There were Meghan's silent legal maneuvers happening in multiple jurisdictions. There was Harry's mounting emotional instability that was becoming harder to hide. And perhaps most concerning, there was the growing risk that the monarchy itself might be implicated in a transatlantic deception that had been years in the making. From Windsor Castle to Clarence House, a new strategy emerged. Internally, it bore a simple name: Legacy Lockdown. At the heart of this response was Prince William, now viewed internally as the monarchy's executive in waiting. Known publicly for his caution and restraint, but privately for his assertiveness and decisiveness, William wasted absolutely no time. On January the 17th, he convened an emergency session of the Royal Succession Oversight Committee. During that session, he issued an executive directive that was clear and uncompromising. Suspend all claims, disbursements, and ceremonial references linked to the Sussex line until verification is complete. The message was cold, legalistic, and according to those present, absolutely necessary. A senior aide to William told the press off the record that this was not an act of vengeance. It was asset protection, reputational, legal, and generational. That same day, Meghan's name was quietly scrubbed from the public archives of the Centre for Early Childhood, a royal initiative that had long been associated with Princess Catherine. The removal was done quietly, but it was deliberate. It was a signal that institutional memory was being rewritten in real time. While William coordinated legal firewalls and managed the palace's response strategy, Princess Anne, who had already been instrumental in confronting Meghan over the Saudi diamond scandal, assumed the role of moral sentinel. At Sandringham, Anne chaired a closed-door session of the Royal Charitable Alliance. During that session, she tabled a formal motion to freeze cooperation with any organisation linked directly or indirectly to Archewell, the Sussex Foundation. The motion passed unanimously without debate. Anne then summoned the Royal Council's internal auditors and requested a full forensic review of royal-affiliated grants, donations, or events that had involved Harry and Meghan from 2020 to 2023. She reportedly told council members that we will not be caught complicit in something we never consented to. The institution did not authorise the narrative. We will not carry the fallout. In Anne's view, this was no longer simply a family issue. It had become a test of royal governance and institutional accountability. As the palace walls closed around the Sussex legacy, Princess Catherine continued playing what insiders have called the long game. She made quiet public appearances, issued carefully controlled statements, and used strategic symbolism to communicate strength and continuity. On January the 18th, she appeared at a children's hospital in Leeds. She was smiling, poised, and dressed in a navy ensemble that echoed Princess Diana's signature colour palette. When a reporter asked her about truth and legacy, she answered simply and powerfully. Dignity is the language that outlives opinion. It wasn't just a soundbite, it was a warning to anyone paying close attention. Insiders later revealed that Catherine had advised William weeks prior to prepare for the emergence of sealed records. She had urged discretion in every internal memo, including the inheritance freeze decision itself. One staff member described her approach by saying that she sees legacy as a garden. You don't just protect it from storms, you remove the weeds when no one is watching. Behind the scenes, Catherine coordinated closely with the Royal Communications Office to align the family's public tone. The strategy was simple: no denials, no drama, only visible unity and strategic silence. With the scandal expanding beyond Meghan's private life into questions of royal integrity and institutional survival, the monarchy implemented 3 new internal protocols. The first is called the No Reference Rule. It states that no royal event or speech shall mention Harry, Meghan, Archie, or Lilibet until succession and lineage are legally confirmed. The second is the Frozen Archive Clause. All joint projects, charities, and digital media referencing the Sussexes are now archived under restricted access. The third is contingency custody preparation. A confidential team has been quietly assembled to examine legal avenues for royal guardianship over the Sussex children, if the current custodial framework collapses entirely. As of January 18th, the monarchy's position is no longer reactionary. It is defensive, deliberate, and according to royal watchers, permanent. The next chapter may require more than inheritance freezes and symbolic silence. It may demand the one thing the royal family dreads most: a reckoning in full daylight. As the palace fortified its internal walls and prepared for a prolonged institutional crisis, far across the Atlantic, a very different kind of collapse was underway. This collapse was not happening behind closed doors or in confidential legal meetings. It was happening in full public view. In Los Angeles, Meghan Markle's carefully constructed media persona, once shielded by elite public relations firms and reinforced by glowing celebrity endorsements, was eroding. At first it happened slowly, almost imperceptibly, but then it happened all at once. The first domino fell when Tyler Perry, once hailed as Meghan's protector, and the man who provided her with post-royal refuge, formally severed all ties. On January the 15th, Perry's legal representatives confirmed that he had no ongoing contractual, residential, or personal affiliations with the Duchess of Sussex. The carefully worded statement was brief, but it was absolutely brutal in its implications. Insiders revealed that Perry had grown deeply uncomfortable with what he viewed as Meghan's strategic manipulation of their friendship. It wasn't just about unpaid debts or the lingering whispers of unreciprocated generosity that had begun circulating in Hollywood circles. It was about being caught in the middle of a storm that he had never consented to being part of. One associate close to Perry said that he offered them a lifeboat and then realized they brought the storm with them. According to Hollywood insiders who spoke on condition of anonymity, Perry's quiet exit sent a chilling signal across the entire entertainment industry. Meghan Markle was no longer seen as a protected asset. She had become a liability. The ghost of Oprah Winfrey's fall resurfaced almost immediately as soon as Perry walked away. In 2021, Oprah had tied her brand and her journalistic legacy to Meghan and Harry's explosive claims during their CBS interview. The interview had been watched by millions worldwide and had sparked intense debate. But by 2023, fact-checkers, biographers, and even neutral analysts had begun to unravel inconsistencies in some of the claims that had been made. Sponsors began pulling out. Media trust in Oprah's judgment dipped noticeably. And Oprah, once considered virtually untouchable in the industry, became unusually quiet about the Sussexes. Now in 2026, industry figures are quietly admitting that the Oprah-Meghan association has become a blueprint of reputational risk. With Perry following suit and distancing himself completely, a once solid wall of A-list allies was now paper-thin. Behind the scenes, executives at Netflix, Spotify, and CAA, which is Creative Artists Agency, began re-evaluating their Sussex commitments with growing urgency. 2 new projects with Archewell Audio were reportedly shelved indefinitely. Meghan's upcoming wellness memoir, which had once been pitched as a post-Martha Stewart reinvention that would redefine lifestyle branding, lost 2 major publishers within 48 hours of the Tyler Perry split. Even her skincare line, which had initially been backed by mid-tier investors who saw potential in her celebrity status, stalled completely after several brand ambassadors declined to sign on. Hollywood's mood had fundamentally changed. No one wanted to be the next burned bridge. One anonymous producer who had worked in the industry for decades put it bluntly, "She doesn't build partnerships, she builds narratives, and when those collapse, she disappears." It's not a great business model. As the reputational cracks deepened and became harder to ignore, Meghan's team initiated what insiders described as a controlled pullback from public-facing platforms. The Archewell website's updates, which had once been regular and carefully timed for maximum impact, slowed to a trickle. The organization's staff, which had already been cut by half in late 2025 due to budget constraints, began issuing farewell messages on LinkedIn. Instagram influencers who had once been proud to partner with Meghan's brand now used far more cautious language when referring to their past collaborations. One former ally posted cryptically that it's okay to outgrow stories that don't grow with you. Meghan's lifestyle brand, which had once been teased as a sophisticated blend of luxury, motherhood, and philanthropy that would appeal to modern women, quietly dropped its entire spring 2026 product line. No announcement was made, no explanation was offered. In its place, there was only silence. And in Hollywood, silence doesn't equal strength or strategic patience. It signals retreat. Back in Montecito, insiders confirmed that staff reductions had intensified dramatically. Deliveries to the estate ceased. A-list guests who had once been regular visitors stopped coming. Paparazzi stationed near the property reported that Meghan had remained indoors for nearly a week, a rare break in her usual public rhythm of carefully orchestrated appearances. Security presence around the property visibly diminished. Rumors of staff pay delays began to leak to local media outlets. One local journalist who had been covering the Sussexes since their arrival in California said that the fortress is cracking and Meghan's running out of defenders. With her royal bridge burned beyond repair, her industry ties fraying by the day, and Tyler Perry's name now removed from her roster of allies, Meghan faced something she had rarely encountered in her public life: complete isolation. Her silence on the woman claiming to be her daughter grew heavier with each passing day. Her legal maneuvering became reactive rather than preemptive, and every move she made or every refusal to move was now being interpreted by the public and the media as confirmation of guilt. Even the California press, which had once been wary of pushing too far for fear of being accused of bias or harassment, began to pivot in its coverage. One editorial published in a Los Angeles paper read simply, "She wanted the crown. Now she's facing the cost." By the evening of January 18th, 2026, the Montecito estate, once presented as a beacon of escape and reinvention for the Sussexes, had grown ominously quiet. The glamour, the prestige, and the bold narratives that had once been wielded so effectively by Meghan Markle and Prince Harry had all but dissolved into legal filings, inheritance freezes, and institutional rejection. But now the focus narrowed to a single figure: Prince Harry. Alone, unanswered, and increasingly isolated, Harry faced a reckoning of his own. The palace's silence had already spoken volumes, but when Lord Pembroke, a senior figure in the Royal Advisory Council, gave a veiled public statement on January the 17th, it marked a clear shift from quiet distancing to institutional redefinition. He said that in modern monarchy, legacy cannot rely on assumption. Truth is not cruelty, it is clear. It was the clearest acknowledgement yet that questions about Archie and Lilibet's biological eligibility were no longer confined to tabloid whispers or sealed court documents. They had now entered the legal, ethical, and dynastic core of the House of Windsor itself. Inside Clarence House, King Charles convened a midnight emergency session with Princess Anne, Princess Catherine, and Prince Edward. The outcome was unanimous. They voted to activate Clause Regent 14, a rarely used provision that allows the Crown to pause recognition of any descendants whose lineage is underdocumented and in active dispute. The decision was made swiftly and without debate. On the morning of January the 18th, Prince Harry reportedly left the Montecito estate in a private black vehicle. According to staff members who witnessed his departure, he took only a duffel bag, a stack of legal documents, and a leather-bound copy of his mother's 1997 will. He did not say goodbye to anyone. He did not take Meghan's calls. His destination was a private cottage near Big Sur, owned by a former army colleague. It was a place where he had once hidden after his deployment in Afghanistan, seeking solitude and distance from the pressures of royal life. For Harry, this was more than just physical distance. It was a symbolic retreat, a return to solitude in the face of truths he could no longer escape or deny. One palace aide who had been briefed on his emotional condition shared that it's not rage, it's a loss. He has lost everything he once rebelled for. But perhaps the moment that truly sealed this turning point came when Paul Burrell, Diana's former butler and one of her most loyal confidants, walked through the gates of Buckingham Palace on January the 18th at 11:30 in the morning. He carried with him a sealed velvet pouch that had been kept hidden in his personal archives for nearly 3 decades. Inside was a handwritten letter from Diana, penned in May 1997, just months before her tragic death in Paris. The palace has not released the full text of the letter, but excerpts confirmed by both the Times and the BBC Royal Desk include the following devastating passage. Harry will face a choice between love and legacy. I pray he remembers that one cannot stand if the other falls. The Royal Legal Office immediately archived the letter under sovereign protection. They used its contents to affirm the continued freeze on inheritance funds linked to Diana's third clause, the one specifically tied to verified descendants. Meanwhile, Meghan Markle remained in Montecito. Her legal team was scrambling to reframe the entire narrative as a witch hunt rather than a legitimate verification of fact. On January the 19th, Archewell's legal counsel attempted to petition for a judicial review of the inheritance freeze. The petition cited ongoing trauma being inflicted on minor children due to what it called institutional bias. The court date was rejected pending DNA evidence, which has yet to be provided by either party. Her public relations firm released a lukewarm statement calling the palace's actions reminiscent of old-world prejudice disguised as procedural integrity. But the press, which had once been sympathetic to Meghan's claims of mistreatment, showed very little interest this time. As one UK columnist wrote bluntly, the world has grown tired of performance. It craves proof. In the final hours of January 19th, King Charles issued a brief televised address to the nation. Dressed in dark grey and seated beside Princess Anne and Princess Catherine, he spoke not of scandal or division, but of legacy and continuity. A monarchy must reflect the clarity of its people. Not perfection, but permanence. We do not close doors easily, but neither do we leave them open to confusion. He paused for a moment, then added with quiet resolve, We are stewards of time, and time has drawn a line. That line was now unmistakably clear. There would be no inheritance disbursements without lineage verification. There would be no restoration of Harry's privileges or titles. There would be no engagement with Meghan's legal narratives. There would be no contact between Archewell and royal charities. It was not framed as a punishment. It was presented as a final separation. As the lights dimmed at Buckingham Palace that evening, a single quote circulated among royal staff. It had reportedly been shared by Princess Catherine after the final council meeting. Sometimes to protect the crown, you must let go of the prince. The fairy tale was over, but the monarchy, battered and tested yet now fully refortified, remained standing, silent, sovereign, and unshakably resolute.